beginning to look a lot like rate hikes. Okay, so you heard this week, you saw that the bills are going to go up, heating bills, but my goodness, this is one of those situations where I'm from the government, I'm here to help you, actually worked, because after the deep freeze, if people had to pay in their rate structure what needed to be paid, it would have been tremendous. This is a good deal.
Yeah, my good friend Gary Mize, Representative Mize, ran a bill on collateralization in the last session that is allowing for what took place at the Corporation Commission. It's actually extended out to 28 years. I think the average rate hike on a bill is going to be $2.12 per bill. In order to cover this, look, we had a once in 100 years ice storm, and I know people were frustrated. I was out of power for 2 weeks. A lot of us were out of power for a while. A lot of us are asking the right questions of our providers when it comes to electricity, but we need to do it in a way that makes sense for everybody's budget. Look, we're all getting squeezed right now. $2.12, I think that's a win in this case.
Oh, it's a win in this case. If we'd had to pay what needed to be done at the time, it would have been bad news.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to learn from this winter storm. I was the same way. I was out of power for a significant amount of time. I know it was frustrating. One thing we learned is we have to continue to have energy diversification. We had a hard time with freezing up natural gas pipelines, a hard time with wind turbines freezing up, and turns out we needed more coal, and we should have had it and shouldn't have shut it down. But the other thing is the legislature went in and passed what's called collateralization, so you can pay that off over a long period of time. Had the legislature not done that, you could be looking at $400 a month price hikes. It turned out to be a great thing. Representative Gary Mize on the House side did a great job getting that done. Nobody likes price increases, but also could be way worse. We're in a lot better shape than Texas is with a much better grid in Oklahoma than they have.
Oh yeah, ERCOT is a mess and still is. All right, speaking of it, we need to invest in that, but nonetheless, for years, legislature has been investing into education. A report comes out from the GOP this week saying we're top in the region. Some say it's not really true, but what is the story?
I couldn't be more proud of what has gone on during my 5 years as floor leader to increase teacher pay. When adjusted for cost of living, Oklahoma is #1 in the region. And that's what the Legislative Office of Fiscal Transparency came out with. And what we can't stress enough is we got to keep going. That's what the whole report was about. There are about 20% of the districts in Texas that pay significantly more than us. About 80% of Texas pay less than us. We have to keep this move going, though. We have great momentum for investment in education. We have great momentum for parental choice in education. And I've said on this TV 100 times, say it again, that's the direction we need to keep going. Keep empowering parents, and keep putting money into our education system.
We're not discussing being last.
Well, the word is right, investment, and we need to continue to invest in education here in the state of Oklahoma. I think oftentimes we get too caught up in this fight over how much teachers are paid and what formula we're using. What we need to remember is that in order to continue to recruit teachers into the profession, we're going to need to stay near the top in the region when it comes to pay. But we also need to continue to invest in our classrooms, making sure that our classroom sizes are appropriate, make sure that we're putting the right technology into our classrooms to give our children the best opportunity that they can to be successful in this marketplace. The more that we do that, the more that we invest, and the less that we fight each other about how it all works out, the better off we'll be.
Coming up in our next segment, Unhealthy Oklahoma. We'll be right back. So I saw a Scrooge story this week. We're talking about waiting lists for developmental disabilities. It's like the movie Groundhog Day. There were some problems dealing with healthcare authority. We all know that. Everything is a problem over there, it seems. But what's the story behind this, John?
So we've been talking about the waiting list on this show for years. I'm the co-founder of the bipartisan, bicameral waiting list caucus. Representative Cindy Munson, who'll be the next minority leader, is part of that caucus, the co-chair with me. We have to do a better job. Now, we've continued to put money inside the waiting list, and what we need at this point is a plan to get enough providers to be able to come in. The waiting list caucus has been talking about that for quite some time, and while we've been making strides, with the extra money, with about a 30% increase in the general revenue fund we're going to have next year, that's when we really push our economic development plan to graduate more providers and get this shame on the state of Oklahoma back down to a reasonable number.
So it's getting done.
I hope so.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just hearken the thoughts of my colleague, Jon Echols here. When I was in the House 6 years ago, we were talking about the waiting list. We're still talking about the waiting list, and it's unfortunate that there are so many Oklahomans that have disabilities that are looking to this as a pathway to participate in society just in the way that the rest of us do regularly. This is a stain on the state right now. We need to get this fixed. One of the pathways to do this, I'll bring up, is managed care. Managed care and the bringing providers in was a possibility to help with the waiting list. So I think that's something that we could look at.
Okay, you know what's falling out of the sky? You know that, guys, what I'm about to say here. Money. There's umpteen G and billion dollars flying around here, and there's so many things that are wrong in Oklahoma. We've been talking about this for a decade, right? And it seems like it's Groundhog Day, the movie, never gets fixed. We need resources. Are we going to be able to finally connect all of this money that's out there, I don't know how we get to it, with the problems we have in Oklahoma that are systemic and need to be fixed?
Well, look, this won't shock too many people at home, but I'll be the first to admit that throwing money at something doesn't always solve the problem. But we do have a lot of money that we can access right now, and we do have really poor health outcomes in the state of Oklahoma. And I'll say this like I did on education. We have to invest in ourselves. And when we invest in healthcare in Oklahoma, we need to make sure that people have access to healthcare. So however we spend this money, we need to spend it in a way that people have access to preventative care so that we don't get too far down the road with disease and then have to spend so much money in order to get people healthy again. If we can prevent that taking place, we'll do ourselves a huge favor in the state of Oklahoma.
You know this issue, what can we do?
I've been going around the city, going around the state, giving the same message. We need to think generationally. We need to think two big things: infrastructure and educational outcomes, getting out the degrees that we need. If we're going to fix healthcare, we have to graduate and retain more nurses. We have to graduate and retain all of the allied healthcare systems, and including our physicians. What we need to be thinking, and which we are thinking, we're thinking big, and I've talked a lot about it on the show. We are thinking big of how we use these dollars to make generational changes so we start graduating the degrees that we need for the jobs of the future, and we will give Oklahoma a better tomorrow if we can think big.
Thinking big. See this again at news9.com/yourvotecounts. Follow me on Twitter @MitchellTalks.